you very much for the intro, Kelsey. I am Joe. I've been with supporting Sage products since Y2K. The Y2K scare is what pulled me into Sage accounting versus a couple decades of doing accounting for manufacturing, construction, oil and gas businesses. So lots of time with Sage products itself, and so I have found that there's some really interesting stuff that you can do within Sage as far as making the reporting so much better for your target audiences. And so the focus today is getting people that aren't numbers crunchers like most of us are into being able to look at our financial statements instead of just glazing over them or trying to drag them into a conversation. So the learning objectives today is to create an effective single-page financial statement. So we'll become familiar with Excel's conditional formatting, optimizing ratios that basically will feed the mini charts that we'll be showing for them. And as a bonus, at the end, there will be a survey, and any attendees that would like a free copy of the template, be sure to fill out the survey, and we'll make sure you get a copy of that. So let's take a look. So here's what a proposed financial statement summary would look like. And what you can see here, where I've got the balance sheet here and the income statement here, and the two things that are geared towards the non-accountants is these icon sets here for green, yellow, red to show whether it's good news, bad news, and also these little mini charts here so that they can quickly look at it. Now, something really important to keep in mind is the most important concept is to know what matters to your particular audience. So in this particular case, I've set it up for an example for an owner whose main focus is on cash and the bottom line. Now, for salespeople or operations, their interests may be more focused. So like sales may be more interested in, of course, sales versus budget and collections, and also as far as receivable balances that are potential points for commissions later on. So, but the main thing is what we want to do is to keep in mind who the main audience is for. So a good goal is to ask yourself, once you've completed one, is do they see 80% or more of their most important info just by scanning? Because scanning is what is the common process to filter out what's important and what's not important, whether it's emails or documents or even Twitter and Facebook. So make it very easy for scanning. So, and you can see here, you know, with a one page, they are getting it. Right now, you can't see the numbers, which is probably kind of representative of how non-accountants would be looking at this. The numbers, their eyes glaze over, blur up, they don't really see it. But if the owner's looking at his working capital is improving and his net income is good while his gross margin is maintaining, you know, you've got his attention right off the bat, and it's now useful information to him. So let's take a look at the components here. So the first thing I was talking about was the conditional formatting, which is what is used in these circles here. Stoplights is what some people call this icon set. And you can see here that it's really just a formula going down. Okay, nothing spectacular on any of them. There is a slight difference. One of the things I recommend is when you're using these icon sets is to make your formula so that either positive is good or negative is good, don't flip them, because, like, for instance, increased asset is a good thing, but increased liability is not a good thing. So you can see here what I did was said I want to make it so that a positive number here is a positive thing that I want to show. So I do have negatives in here for the liabilities, equities, and with the revenue it's slightly different because I am verifying year to date the prior year and going through here. Okay, so before we get started, some of you who are familiar with Sage Intelligence are aware that this stuff here is standard Sage Intelligence thing. So I do have formulas in here so that you can easily look at different periods right off the bat. And you can see with the sample data, it doesn't really go too far, so I'm kind of limited to particular months. I can also come over here and with trees, I can go out and change it from all cities to if I'm interested in finding out how coastal is doing. Okay, so this is built on Sage Intelligence, but for the most part, 80% of this can be done in plain old Excel, but of course, there would be more manual entry here for filling this in. So that's something to consider if you're not using Sage Intelligence, is how can I simplify the maintenance of data entry that I have to do from month to month. So let me put this back to summary, and let's start looking again at this part here. So I'm going to highlight this here, and I'm going to eliminate these and then show you how easily they're built. So under your Home tab, Conditional Formatting, what I'm going to do is just clear the rules. Okay, and now I go back in, and here's how you do it from scratch. Then you'd say a new rule. Okay, you have all sorts of things, but I'm just going to jump to the icon sets. Okay, and I've got a section up here as far as different things, but what I'm focusing on here is defining what values will make it green, yellow, or red. And so in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say anything that's greater than 0, because I have flipped the sign to be consistent, that positives are good and negatives are not so good. And so what do I do with zeros? So then I set this for greater than or equal to, and I say 0. Oop, I need to set both of these to a number. And so now what I've got is when a value is greater than 0, be green. When it's equal to, or when it's less than or equal to and greater than and equal to, which means when it's equal to 0, show yellow, and when it's less than 0, to be red. And that's all there is to it. If you don't like that, one of the things you can do is you can come into your icon sets and hover over it and choose other formats just by hovering over these. But you could also, if you had a problem with it or you missed a cell or anything, you can come in and manage it, and just by double clicking on it, it takes you back to the same thing we saw before. Okay, so now that gets us that part, but now let's take a look at what's driving these mini charts before we get into creating a mini chart. So down here, what I've got is off to the side so that I can make the widths available for me as much as possible, is a real important part to me for maintenance and for troubleshooting is to break out the components. I could have had very complex formulas up here and embedded my values for my current ratios, but what I did was I went through here, and for my components, I broke out every component that I need in order to drive whatever ratios that I have down here. So you can see I've got current ratio working, debt to asset, gross margin, net income, etc. But what I'm doing here is I am just this. If you're not using Sage Intelligence, you would be manually entering this info up here. But you can see with Sage Intelligence, we've got it so that there's formulas, so it automatically updates depending on what particular month we've chosen. So one thing to point out is what one of the things that I've done here is notice that I have a date here, and basically this says date is, based on the year, the month, and day one. And you can see it's based on pulling from here. So it's, formatting for May 1st, 2020, okay? But this is a different format than what is normally provided by Excel. So what I've done is I've created a custom format, and all you have to do is come down here and choose custom for your format cell, and you can see where I typed in MM-YY, and it says, okay, that's what it'll give you. If I added an extra Y here, you can see it tells me the sample that I'm going to create. I'm going to keep it there. And so what I'm going to be doing is using this for this row here for the x-axis on my charts. Okay. So another good thing when you're doing ratios is this Excel function that's built into plain old Excel, the if error, because here I am dividing by 0, and if it happens to be 0, then I would get those awful divide by 0 errors that I don't want showing. I'd rather have it to be 0. And I could do an if then else, where if this number is 0, then make it 0. This makes it a lot cleaner, because what it's saying is if this comes out to be any kind of error, and in this case 99% of the time it will be divided by 0, then just put in 0. So it makes it a little cleaner for editing, because your formula is a lot simpler than the typical if then else. So okay, so this is the foundation for the creation of the table. So you can see up here we've got is this looks pretty similar to what we were just looking at, except it does some skipping. So let's take a look at actually creating these mini charts from scratch. Okay. Now the charts with Excel, they're very powerful, which means sometimes they can be very intimidating. So I'll show you the approach that I take of what to ignore and what to change in order to quickly create these mini charts. Okay, so first step is, of course, go to Insert and choose which of your charts that you would like to do. In this case, I chose Area, and I want to choose 2D because for 3D is really good if you're going to be doing a projection and a presentation that's going to be projected. But for mini charts, they really come out kind of hard to read, and they also are they distort the perspective enough that it's really not giving a quick scannable answer. And so I highly recommend using the 2D area. And so we've got I've got something highlighted down here. I'm going to change that. I'm going to delete that out. And I'm going to just start again with an insert. I'm going to do an area, do a blank one. Okay. So now the next thing is to select my data. Okay. You go into select data, and it's like, oh my goodness, what's this chart range thing? What's this? This. So what I do is I start with this side. Okay. The legend entries is really your Y, your vertical axis. I don't know why they didn't put vertical here, because they do tell you horizontal over on this side. But anyway, we're just going to click on Add, and you can see here it's asking for a series name, okay, and we'll do whichever is the first one. So current ratio, I'll just do current ratio. And then it says what's the series values. Well, the values for that are going to be these going across here. Okay, so I say okay, and then it says okay, current ratio, not really helpful at this time, but that's all right. I'll preview it in a minute. But I don't want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to edit that. And again, it asks me for my axis label. And so what I'm going to do here is choose this to get me my labels. So now when I say OK, it does show, oh, okay, that looks more like what I want. Let's see how things look. Hey, getting close there. So first thing is, since I'm only doing a one level, I don't need this legend, so I'll delete that off. The lines, while it's large, I'll get rid of it. Be careful in Excel, sometimes the charts, like if you click on the top portion of the top line, you will end up with something totally, like this, that's not what you want. So what you want to do is click to make sure that what you've got selected as lines. You can double click on it, and it comes up, and I don't want any lines here. So I'll say no lines. Okay. The next thing I do is like, let's make it just a little nicer. I'm going to choose this beveled style here, and it did add it back because it was in there. I'm going to take the lines out again. Sorry about that. And now the next thing I'm going to do is I want to size this. So I'm going to just double click on this, okay, and I'm going to go to size, and you'll have to figure out what's the appropriate size for what you like to do. But in my case, what I tend to find is 1.75 inches by 2.75. What works at a reasonable level, and you can see when I tab through it, it gives me an example. It's like, yeah, that's looking really good. So I'll do that. Okay, and you can see that it already changed it so that instead of showing every other or showing every label down here, it's trying to show every other label with this nice slanted text to it. But if you don't like that, in which case, to me, if I look it over here from the current down here, I kind of like it so it's flatter. It prints out easier. It's easier to see, which line is January, which one's March, which is then therefore which is best for February. So I'll come down here, and if you click, you can double click here, and then choose in here, say interval between tick marks is 1. So I want a tick mark for every month. But what I'm going to do is specify the interval label to be 2 at this point. Okay. And you can see, again, by just tabbing through, it starts changing. And it's like, well, let's get rid of that alignment. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to just change it to 1 and then say, no, just make it 0. And that then does it. For some reason, if you click in 0, it doesn't like it. It needs that degree. So that's why I click on this to make it so that it then gives me the formats that I want. So that's how quick and easy you can do both the conditional formatting and these little mini charts. Okay, there were some tweaks that I had to do. So, like for instance, for net income, because it had profit and loss, I did have to come in here, and for the label offset, so that it would be not hidden on these negatives, I did make the label distance from axis to 500. The standard is 100 that you see here. Okay. And let's see, there was one other one that I made a change that's pretty common, which is on the working capital. On the working capital, on the and it's also kind of tricky to sometimes click on the part that you want. So you it's not really what I want. What you can do is you can come over to Format, and here you can also choose which one you want. So in this case, I want the vertical x-axis. It highlights it for me. I can double click on it and get to it. But what I did here for working capital was I didn't want it to show 0 because the lowest number was roughly 400. And so I set the minimum axis for 400 and a maximum to 1500, and it just went to, because of how it calced out the numbering, it set it for this. Okay. The other thing that I did was I said down here for the horizontal axis crosses at 400, so that, you know, I'm not wasting space on values that don't exist. So that's the way that I set this up for being able to report this in a fashion that makes the best use of space. Okay. One other thing that Excel has by itself, and I didn't utilize, but what you have available is also you can create spark lines. And so with those, you can insert a spark line in a cell. And so let's just take a quick look at what one of them looks like. So it just asks you what's the data range. And so if I wanted to do let's do current ratio still. I just select that, and then it also asks me where I want it to show. And now I've got this little mini line here that's one cell that gives me a mini chart. Some people really like these, but you don't have any controls like what you do on the charts to be able to put much headers on there. I guess you could put some info up here and down below as far as what's special, but they're very interesting, simple tool to create, and you can switch it to, I can come in here and switch it so that, you can switch it very easily, and for some reason I just drew a blank as far as how to be able to, in design, I can come in here and just change it to that, and you got different colors, all sorts of different things there. So, okay, so I did talk fast because there's a lot of things to cover, but since it's being recorded, you'll be able to play it back and see what areas that I may have talked too fast for. I'm sorry. But that's the general discussion that I wanted to talk about, except for I do want to reemphasize that in order for this to work, no matter how pretty we make it, if the main audience is not interested in working capital, current ratio, gross margins, and net income, this will be just as blurred as these numbers will. It has no value to them. So a great deal of time, sometimes well over half my time, is to find out from the target audience what exactly they're interested in, so that I can give them the information they need. You know, from an accountant's viewpoint, we've got our mindset as far as, okay, numbers tell the whole story. But for other people, it's just like you're speaking a foreign language. You're using military initials for someone who's never been in the military. So anyway, at this point, that's all I wanted to show you as far as how that goes. I think what we'll do is we'll open it up to, well, let's see, I think there's one other thing I needed to show you is the Sage Summit is coming up, and so they usually have really great presentations there for Sage Intelligence, Sage itself, and a lot of other things. So highly recommend that you do that. So obviously in 30 minutes I can't share all the reporting tips and tricks I know. However, if this was valuable to you and you want more in-depth knowledge on reporting, Excel, Sage Intelligence, or even Sage 100, be sure to contact me. There we go. For setting up appointments so we can do further education.